My brother kicked me out of his son's birthday party because my special needs son is not normal. But it's only fair that he loses everything for being a jerk. It all started when my mother invited me and my son to my nephew's birthday party. She had been talking about it for weeks and was very excited about the party. Of course, she never mentioned that there would be an issue with me bringing my son, even though he has special needs. I knew that my brother and sister-in-law never really understood him, but my mother seemed optimistic about it. She even told me that it would be a good family gathering and that everything would be fine. I thought that was enough to assume I had the green light. My son, Eli, takes some time to process things, and he may react inappropriately if he feels overwhelmed. But he has never done anything intentionally to bother anyone, and I know how to handle him. I have always been cautious about social situations, but with my family, I thought it would be different. I wanted Eli to have the opportunity to enjoy family moments just like any other member of the family, so I thought the party would be a great idea. On the day of the party, I dressed Eli in a nice outfit, something he would feel comfortable in. He was excited. I could tell by how he kept talking nonstop about the cake and the games, since he is not always invited to birthday parties. I prepared everything, made sure he had his favorite toy to keep him calm, and we left. The ride to my brother's house was fine. Eli was happy, chatting and asking if there would be balloons and if he could eat lots of cake. It was sweet to hear him so excited, and I thought everything would go well since he was in a great mood, better than on other days. The idea was for him to have a fun day and socialize. But when we arrived, things started to feel a little off. My brother's house was full of people, but there was no warm welcome. I should have realized something was wrong when my sister-in-law did not even come out to greet us. She just stood in the doorway, arms crossed, looking me up and down before finally saying that she did not expect Eli to be there. I told her that Eli was very excited and that we would not be a bother. But then, my brother came out of the living room, looked at Eli, then at me, and told me the same thing, that they really had not expected him to come. He said I should have known, considering Eli's behavior. I was about to ask him what kind of behavior he was referring to, because my son had never done anything to bother them, but my brother kept talking. He said it would be better if we did not come in. He said there were a lot of people there, and Eli might make them feel uncomfortable. He just wanted to make sure no one felt uncomfortable. He said he could not even look at him. I asked if he was serious or if this was some kind of twisted joke that I did not find funny. Was he really telling me that my son could not come in because of who he was, because he might make others feel uncomfortable? I asked, what does that even mean? Eli is a child just like your son. My brother's face turned red with embarrassment, and he raised his hands defensively. He tried to explain that it was not like that, but I could see in his eyes that he did not want Eli there, that he did not want to deal with it. He kept insisting that it would be better if we left. He said they would make it up to Eli another time, but I did not care because he had already said enough. I felt awful, but I knew it would not get any better, so I decided to leave. I took Eli's hand and we started walking toward the front yard. The look on Eli's face when he asked why we could not go in broke my heart. He did not understand what had just happened. He kept asking why we could not stay. I told him that some people simply do not understand him and that we would be okay. But it was hard. It was hard to explain when I myself did not fully understand it. We stood outside, waiting for a taxi to pick us up. Everything was quiet. Eli leaned against me, still holding his toy. I tried to be strong for him to make sure he did not see how much it hurt me. But inside, I was shattered. All I wanted was for Eli to be accepted, to have the chance to experience something normal. And my brother, of all people, treated him as if he were contagious. At that moment, out of nowhere, my brother's father-in-law walked up to us. His hands were in his pockets. I did not know if he had seen everything that happened or if he just came out because he noticed we were there, but at that moment, I did not want to talk to anyone. He stopped a few feet in front of us and was silent for a while before he finally spoke. He said that what had just happened was not okay, that he had seen everything and wanted me to know that he was on my side. He apologized for my brother's and his daughter's behavior and said I did not deserve this. I could tell he was being sincere, or at least that is what I felt when he spoke. He told me he understood how I must have felt being rejected like that, and that he was truly sorry for what had happened. He offered me his number and asked for mine, telling me that if I ever needed help, I could reach out to him. He did not push the subject any further, but I could tell he just wanted me to know that we had his support. It was a small comfort, but it was something. It did not take away the pain of what had just happened, but it helped. When the taxi finally arrived, I thanked my brother's father-in-law, and we got in and went home. During the ride, Eli kept asking questions, why we could not stay, why he could not eat cake. We stopped somewhere to buy him a small cake so that at the very least he could have that for the day. It does not make up for what happened, but at least Eli was not as sad when we got home with his new cake and he was not happy either. But at that moment, it was the only thing I could do for him. I do not know what will happen to my relationship with my brother after this because I do not think there is anything he can do now to make me forgive him. It is not like he can have a relationship with me but not my son. That is not how things work. If he cannot accept Eli, if he sees him as something to avoid, then I will have to avoid him. The morning after the birthday party, my phone rang. It was my brother calling, and I almost didn't answer. The last thing I wanted was to talk to him, but it was probably best to just get it over with. So I picked up the call, trying to steady my breathing before speaking. If I expected anything, it was at least an apology or an attempt to fix the situation, though I knew it would be difficult for me to accept that. And I did receive some kind of apology, but it was clear from his tone that he was angry or frustrated. It wasn't that he truly felt sorry, far from it. He told me that I needed to understand that it wasn't personal, that he didn't mean to hurt me or Eli. He said it was just a situation and that he didn't want to ruin his son's party. He kept repeating that this wasn't about Eli, but about the chaos that could have been caused by having him there. I told him to stop right there. I didn't believe a word he was saying and told him that he couldn't just throw us out and expect me to be fine with it. I told him that if he truly cared, he wouldn't have said what he did. He didn't even look me in the eyes when he kicked us out of the party, so why was he now pretending that everything was fine? He told me I was being dramatic, that I was exaggerating everything just because he didn't want my son in his house. It was an apology, but it was filled with more excuses than actual remorse, and I have to be honest about that. He said things had gotten a little out of control and that maybe if I hadn't brought Eli to the party, it wouldn't have been so uncomfortable. I don't know why he thinks it would have been uncomfortable when my son has never put him in a situation like that. He may be a little different because of his condition, but everyone is different in their own way. For example, my brother's son loves insects, and every time we're at a gathering, he brings one to show us. We could be in the middle of eating, and he would have the ugliest bug you could imagine in his hand, excited to show it off. But even then, I never told him he couldn't bring them or that it was uncomfortable for everyone. If our own family can't accept each other as we are, what can we expect from the rest of the world? I wasn't going to let him treat us this way and then pretend everything was fine. He couldn't just kick my son out of a birthday party and then expect to fix everything with a phone call. I told him that the way he had acted wasn't just an isolated incident, it was a pattern with him. Over the years, I had seen how he treated people who didn't fit his idea of what was normal. And it wasn't just Eli. He had always been dismissive of people who didn't meet his expectations, and now I was witnessing it firsthand. What hurt the most was that, even if just for a moment, I had hoped he would be different with Eli. But he wasn't. He had shown me exactly who he was, and I wasn't going to ignore it. My brother was silent for a moment, and then he tried to twist things to fit his own version of what had happened. He told me I had misunderstood everything. He said this wasn't about Eli at all, but about how I had handled the situation. He told me that if I had acted more normal and hadn't made such a big scene, everything would have been fine. At that point, I wasn't sure if I was angrier or more hurt, and I told him he had already made his decision. I wasn't going to beg him to accept Eli if that was how he felt. There was no point in pretending everything was okay. I told him we were done, that I didn't want to be part of his version of an ideal family where only certain people were acceptable. I knew he wasn't used to me standing up for myself, and maybe that's why he tried to change the subject. Then he said he needed me to know what my little spectacle had done. Apparently, according to him, I had completely ruined his son's birthday party and practically stolen all the family's attention away from his child. His father-in-law had also interpreted the situation the wrong way, and somehow I was to blame for that. But in the case of his father-in-law, that interpretation was my fault. He was accusing me of manipulating his father-in-law into turning against him at the birthday party, which led to his father-in-law sending him a few messages that morning. The content of the messages could be summed up as his father-in-law telling him that the money he had planned to give his family for a new house would now be wisely spent elsewhere, perhaps even helping Eli and me. He said his father-in-law also told him he wouldn't be sponsoring any more parties since they were acting like a couple of idiots. I could almost picture the rage on his face as he told me the rest. Apparently, his father-in-law had also had a conversation with him after I left, criticizing him for everything that had happened. At least, for what my brother believed I had done to ruin everything. And his father-in-law wasn't joking because he told my brother not to bother calling him again. His mind was made up, especially regarding the money. There was also a piece of advice for my brother and his wife. His father-in-law advised him to tell his daughter to adjust her attitude or she would end up just like her mother. That particular line seemed to hit him hard, and I had to stop myself from laughing, but I wasn't going to let this moment pass without giving him my opinion. I ended the call by telling him that he couldn't stand the fact that his father-in-law actually liked me and Eli because we didn't go through life treating others as if they were beneath us, unlike him and his wife. Then I hung up without waiting for a response. I had already listened to him for too long. I haven't heard from him since, and I hope it stays that way. It has been a week since the call with my brother, during which I also decided to block him and his wife to avoid future confrontations. Not that I mentioned it to him. I don't mind losing a brother over this. First, because this whole situation has been terrible, and second, because I can't see someone like him as my brother anymore. What I want to share now is that my mother called me. I knew she was caught in the middle of all this, trying to balance her loyalty to her son with what she knew, deep in her heart, was wrong. Even though I wasn't in the mood to hear apologies, I let her speak. She kept saying how sorry she was, how she wished things had turned out differently, and that she had no idea my brother would act that way toward Eli and me. I told her that at this point I didn't want to talk about it anymore because it was a closed chapter. I didn't need her apologies because she wasn't the one who kicked us out of the party. However, she was the one who invited us, assuring us that nothing would happen, and then did nothing to support us when things went wrong. Although, to be fair, she might not have witnessed exactly what happened. She understood and didn't push too much, so I thought that was the end of it and that in some way things would return to normal, except for some inevitable shifts in our family dynamics. But 2 days after that call with my mother, to my surprise, my brother's father-in-law contacted me directly. He called and asked if we could talk. I said yes, even though I didn't feel like dragging out this situation any longer. Still, he had been kind to us, and I could at least spare him a few minutes of my time. He told me that he admired how I kept moving forward despite everything, especially after losing my husband during my pregnancy. He mentioned that his own mother had been a single mother, and he had always admired that same strength in her, which reminded him a lot of my situation. He even said that Eli reminded him of himself because he too had faced certain disadvantages as a child. Hearing that stirred a lot of emotions in me. I thanked him for his kindness and told him I didn't expect anything from him. I explained that my goal was to provide for Eli without depending on anyone's generosity or charity, and while I deeply appreciated his words, I didn't want him to feel obligated to offer anything. But he was quick to reassure me, saying that this wasn't about obligation. It was about wanting to make a difference where he felt he could. He told me that Eli could thrive regardless of the challenges he faced. He understood how difficult it was for people to accept differences, and he admitted that he was ashamed of how things had unfolded. He explained that he had resources set aside, not just financial ones, but also connections with people who could help. He didn't want me to feel like I had to carry everything alone unless that was truly what I wanted. He wanted to make sure I knew that someone was on my side and that I had options if things ever became overwhelming. He wasn't just offering money, he was offering real support, a sense of community and family that I had been missing for so long. I told him that I appreciated his offer more than I could put into words, and I admitted that life had been tough since my husband passed away. But I was determined to give Eli everything he deserved. I told him I would consider his offer, and that his kindness was a reminder that there were still good people out there, people who didn't judge us or look down on us. He encouraged me to stay in touch, and reassured me once again that this wasn't charity. It was an opportunity to honor the legacy of resilience within his own family. He shared that his mother had always told him that true strength was about lifting each other up, not tearing each other down. That was everything my brother and his wife weren't, and I never expected to find an ally in his wife's family. I don't want to accept his money, partly because I'm a bit proud and feel uncomfortable receiving that kind of help, especially from someone I've only met twice in my life, once at the birthday party and once at my brother's wedding, maybe even a few other times, but I don't really remember. Still, I do appreciate his words and support. It's the kind of thing I would have expected from my own brother. But you can't always count on family for these things. So far, I've managed to balance everything on my own, but about 4 or 5 days ago, my brother's father-in-law called me again. This time, his offer was different. He mentioned a special school for Eli, a place I had heard of before because it's well known for its support of children with unique needs. He said the school was highly respected, a place where Eli could thrive, with small class sizes, dedicated resources, and programs designed specifically for children like him. He promised to cover all the costs, no strings attached, as he put it. It's tempting, without a doubt. The school he's offering is far better than the one Eli currently attends, but it's a private institution completely out of my reach. I've done the best I can with the resources we have, and Eli's current school does an acceptable job. But I know he would benefit from more specialized attention and greater opportunities. Maybe it's time to swallow my pride and accept that someone wants to help us. He genuinely wants Eli to have this opportunity, and he seems so sincere, but I still hesitate. It's not that I don't trust him exactly, it's just that accepting help feels foreign to me. I've always been somewhat on my own and have received little help over the years. A little from my mother, but that's about it. I feel like if I accept, it will be as if we owe something to someone. And it complicates the family dynamics even further because he is my brother's father-in-law, the same person who withdrew his support from my brother. But then I ask myself, am I letting my pride get in the way of something that could truly benefit my son? Am I holding us back by trying to prove that we can do it all alone? I would love to hear what you all think. Am I overthinking this? Should I accept his help and give Eli this opportunity? Or would it be smarter to keep things as they are, staying within what we know and can control? It's not an easy decision. There's a lot to consider, and I feel like it's a huge step, almost like putting our lives in someone else's hands by accepting. Eli is my world, and I want to give him the very best, but there's a limit to what I can provide on my own. This school would be a complete transformation for him. I know that ultimately the decision is mine to make, but your opinions and advice mean a lot to me. I'm going to take a few days to read through all your comments, just as I have with previous posts, and then I'll make my decision. After reading all the responses, I realized how many different perspectives there were on this decision. I will talk about my decision in a moment, but first, I want to talk about my brother. I have continued ignoring my brother. Honestly, I felt like I had already wasted enough energy on him and his tantrums. But, of course, he couldn't resist the temptation to try to get his message across to me. Apparently, he sent my mother to warn me not to speak with his father-in-law or accept anything from him, as somehow it would ruin his family's standing if I accepted the help. When my mother relayed this to me, I had to stop her. I firmly told her that this was none of his business and that I didn't need anyone, not even her, interfering in my affairs. She tried to apologize, but I had already had enough of people telling me what to do, especially those who weren't there for us in the first place. But all of their comments really made me think. Many of you shared stories about hesitating to accept help, but ultimately realizing it was the right decision. Some of you had close people who went through similar situations with family, and we're talking about support that could be life-changing for Eli, so I was being incredibly foolish to let my pride come first. It's hard to break old patterns after spending so much time with a particular mindset, but I was being irrational. Most of you encouraged me to prioritize Eli's needs and accept the help. At the same time, some of you expressed concerns, and I deeply appreciate your honesty. I understand the warning about being cautious when accepting help, especially from someone connected to my brother's family. Some even pointed out that, while the offer sounded great, I needed to ensure it wasn't a way to gain power or control over us. I received opinions from different angles, which gave me all the information I needed to make the most informed decision possible. No decision is ever perfect, but sometimes you just have to make one and move forward with life. In the end, however, it became clear that most of you agreed that if the offer came from a place of kindness, and I set clear boundaries, this could be a positive change for Eli. I saw how much support there was for him, how many people wanted the best for him, and that gave me the final push I needed to make my choice. I spoke with my brother's father-in-law about boundaries and ensured that this was about giving Eli what he needed, not about owing anyone anything. So I decided to accept it. I accepted his help. I want to give Eli every opportunity to succeed, and now I can see that accepting help doesn't make me any less capable as a mother. A part of me is still cautious, of course. I will keep a close eye on everything and ensure that things remain under my control. But knowing that Eli will be in an environment where he will be supported and can grow, that is worth setting my pride aside. Thank you all for helping me see things more clearly. The support and advice I received here meant more than you could imagine, and it reminded me that sometimes letting people into our lives isn't a sign of weakness. It's about doing what's best for those we love. We recently had a meeting regarding my son, and I used the moment to ask about something. I told him that he didn't have to answer if he didn't want to, but it was something my brother had mentioned. So he told me the story about his ex-wife. Basically, she was unfaithful and abandoned him and their daughter to run away with her lover. He believes his daughter has some similar traits to her mother, including how she treated my son, so he has told her that she needs to change and make an effort, because she could end up like her. Her story didn't have a happy ending. After divorcing Victor and running off with this man, the man eventually cheated on her and left her practically ruined. With Victor, she had a relatively comfortable life, but she threw it all away for what she thought was love. My next question was whether he thought his daughter might be unfaithful to my brother now or in the future. He said he didn't believe that was likely, and the reason he explained was that while she had some similar traits, she wasn't exactly like her mother in other aspects. Meanwhile, my brother has his own problems right now. He was fired. Victor, who always likes to help people, had helped him get that job by speaking with one of his friends to secure a position for him at the company. But Victor also informed his friend about what had happened with my son, and he told him it was up to him how he wanted to handle that information. We already know what he decided to do. My brother was fired. I'd be lying if I said I felt bad about it. At one point, my brother was going to receive Victor's help to buy a house, and now he has lost his job. But I suppose you get what you give, and this is what my brother received. I had forgotten about these posts, but I had to bring them back to share something about my brother. No, it's not infidelity. But before I forget, Eli has been attending his new school and receiving so much support. Not only is he happy because he loves this new place, but I am too, because I can see how much of a difference this kind of environment makes for him. But what I have to share is about my brother's divorce, which is the reason I'm writing to you all now. I don't know all the details because my relationship with my brother is still complicated. My mother continues to act as the intermediary, but at least she has accepted that she cannot repair our bond and only updates me on what's happening in his life without pressuring me to make things go back to how they were. At least that's one good thing I can share with you. The divorce is related to the fact that my brother hasn't been able to find a job since losing his last one. I don't know if his industry is tough or if he's just had bad luck. But his wife has grown tired of him and has asked for a divorce. Victor isn't surprised because he always saw the resemblance between his daughter and his ex-wife. He says that the fact that she is asking for a divorce now, when my brother is going through a difficult time related to his job, is very similar to his own past experience. At least his daughter left my brother outright instead of cheating on him until she got caught and then abandoning their child after the divorce. At least in her case, she is asking for shared custody of their child. Right now, my brother could really use a family that supports him, but he doesn't have one. Because he chose to push them away for not being normal like him. How does that normalcy fit into his new reality? Being a divorced, unemployed father? Is that normal? Well, it is now for him.